Hey, are you holding on to guilt? Scared to feel joy again? I'm Patty Jackson, a certified grief and trauma supporter. I'm here to help you get rid of the guilt so you can have joy in your life again. I've walked the long road of grief, first losing my husband in 2018, and most recently, losing both of my parents. I know the valleys are deep, but you don't have to walk them alone. Together, we're leaning into our faith to find real, lasting hope. It's time to rebuild, rediscover, and reimagine. I'm so glad you're here. Earbuds in. Let's get back to loving and living your life as God intended. Hey y'all, welcome back to Grief Relief for Christian Women. I'm Patty, and if you're walking through grief right now, please know that you are not alone. If you've been listening for a while, you know I'm not here to tell you that grief is easy. I'm not going to give you some cute little Christian cliche and tell you, just have faith, everything will be fine. Because sometimes faith looks a whole lot messier than that. Sometimes faith looks like getting out of bed when you really don't want to. Sometimes faith looks like crying in the shower. Sometimes faith looks like saying, God, I trust you, while simultaneously saying, but Lord, I have absolutely no idea what you're doing. And with that being said, today I want to talk about two little words that can completely change the direction of our lives: fear or faith. Because after loss, fear can become a very loud voice. Fear says things like, what if something else happens? What if I can't handle this? What if I'm alone forever? What if I get sick? Really sick, like cancer or something. Y'all, I've had all these thoughts in the past 8 years. Fear could say, what if I lose someone else? For me, I remember being scared that someone I know, would be next to die. And then how would I get through that also? I was scared it would be my son or one of my siblings or their kids. It goes on and on if you let it. What if I'm never happy again? Good old question fear likes to throw at us. What if this is as good as it's going to get? And sometimes fear doesn't scream. Sometimes fear whispers. It quietly convinces us to stop living. And that's why I want you to remember this sentence today. I read this recently in one of my devotionals, and I love it. Fear freezes life, faith thaws it, releases it, and sets it free. Don't you love that? Because grief can freeze parts of us, but faith can begin to thaw what grief has frozen. So today we're going to talk about what it means to remain true to faith when fear is knocking on the door. First, let's say our prayer. Father God, thank you for meeting us right where we are. For the woman listening today who is hurting, afraid, lonely, exhausted, or uncertain about what comes next, I pray that she would feel your presence. Lord, when fear is telling her things, remind her that you are leading and in control and near to the brokenhearted. When fear tells her she can't do this, remind her that she doesn't have to do it alone. Help us remain true to faith. Help us trust you when we cannot see the whole picture. Give us courage to take the next step. In Jesus' name, amen. Let's talk about fear for a minute, because I think sometimes we underestimate just how much loss changes the way we see the world. Before Ralph died, I didn't walk around thinking about death all the time. No, I didn't wake up thinking, who am I going to lose today? But after losing someone you love, something changes. You know firsthand that the worst thing you imagined could actually happen, and that can make you afraid of everything. You might find yourself checking on your children, or worrying about your parents or your friends, or thinking about your own mortality. Every ache becomes something that you Google. Every phone call at an unusual hour makes your heart race. Someone doesn't answer the phone and your mind immediately writes a 10-chapter tragedy. And grief can make fear feel like it's protecting you. But here's the problem. Fear doesn't protect you from your life. It can actually prevent you from living it. Fear says don't get too attached. Don't love too deeply. It says don't try something new. Don't travel. And don't make plans. And don't trust people. Don't hope, because if you don't hope, maybe you won't be disappointed. And if you don't love, maybe you won't lose. And if you don't try, maybe you won't fail. If you don't move forward, maybe nothing else can hurt you. But honey, that's not living. That's just surviving. And there is a big difference. Fear freezes us in the moment of loss. It can make us emotionally camp out in the worst day of our lives. We replay it. We analyze it. We wonder what we could have done differently. We imagine alternate endings, and we think about what should have happened. And sometimes we become afraid of moving forward because moving forward feels like leaving the person behind. Moving forward means carrying their love with you into the life that remains. You're not leaving them behind. And that's where faith becomes so important. Faith doesn't erase that loss. Faith doesn't pretend it didn't happen. Faith says things like, this happened, it hurts, but this is not the end of my story. That's a very different statement. So today, I want to encourage you to remain faithful, or some would say, keep the faith. Not that perfect faith, not the Instagram, Pinterest kind of faith. Not, I've got everything figured out faith, but real faith. The kind of faith that sometimes has tears running down your face. The kind of faith that says, God, I don't understand, but I do trust you. Or, I don't like this, but I know you're still good. And I don't know what tomorrow looks like, but I know who holds tomorrow. That's faith. Hebrews 11:1 tells us, now faith is being sure of what we hope for and certain of what we do not see. Think about that. Faith is being very certain of what we don't see. And grief is full of things we cannot see. We can't see the future, and we can't see how we're going to feel 6 months from now. I can tell you, though, as your cheerleader and your coach, that 6 months from now, you will feel a lot different. You will feel better. You know, we can't see all the ways God is going to work, but we can trust Him. That's what faith does. Faith doesn't require you to see the entire staircase. It asks you to take the next step. Faith looks through the windows hope has opened. Doesn't that give you chills? Because grief can make the world feel like the windows have been nailed shut. Believe me, everything looks dark. But faith climbs one step, then another, and another. Faith doesn't deny the pain downstairs. It simply refuses to stay there forever. Faith climbs the stairs love has made. And then faith looks through the windows that hope has opened. Hope says things like, there's still something ahead. There can still be laughter. There can still be purpose. And there can still be friendships. There can still be adventure. And there can still be joy. There can still be love. There can still be God-sized surprises you haven't even imagined yet. And no, that doesn't mean you stop missing the person you lost. It means you stop believing that your loss is the only thing that defines you. Fear loves the phrase, what if? What if something happens? What if I fail? What if I get hurt? What if I never love again? What if I make the wrong decision? What if I'm alone forever? What if, what if, what if? But here's something I've learned in these last 8 years. We can use the same words and change the question. Instead of, what if something terrible happens? What if we ask, what if something beautiful happens? What if God has something new for you? What if you laugh harder than you've laughed in years? What if you discover a part of yourself you didn't know existed? Or what if you make a new friend? What if you travel somewhere you've always wanted to go? Or what if you discover a purpose born directly out of your pain? What if your story helps another woman survive hers? What if? Now I want to talk about true happiness. Over the years, I've learned that happiness isn't simply about circumstances. True happiness depends upon a close alliance with God. That's where our foundation has to be, because circumstances do change. People change, our bodies change, and our plans change. Life changes, but God doesn't. If your happiness depends entirely upon everything going right, you're going to spend your life riding an emotional roller coaster. But when your joy is rooted in God, you can experience joy even in the middle of sorrow. You can laugh while still missing someone. You can enjoy a beautiful day while still carrying heartbreak. You can be grateful and overwhelmed at the exact same time. Grief doesn't cancel joy, and joy doesn't cancel grief. They can coexist. One of my favorite scriptures comes from Psalm 91:4. He will cover you with his feathers, and under his wings you will find refuge. His faithfulness will be your shield. I want you to picture this because some days we don't need another strategy. We need shelter. We need refuge. We need somewhere to rest. And God says, come under my wings, not figure out everything and not solve tomorrow's problems. And you don't have to understand why. Just come, rest, breathe, stay close. There are days when faith looks like taking action. And there are days when faith looks like sitting quietly in God's presence and saying, Lord, I don't have anything left today. And that's okay. I don't have to impress God. And I don't have to perform for him. I don't have to pretend I'm stronger than I am. I can be exactly who I am. Here's something else I want you to think about. Fear can become a habit. After you've experienced something traumatic, your brain can become accustomed to scanning for danger. You start looking for the next bad thing. If you're not careful, you can spend so much time preparing for tomorrow's disaster that you completely miss today's blessing. I've done it. I've done it once or twice, but my attitude is not to worry because what I've learned is worrying won't help and it sure doesn't fix it. I'm not a worrier, and I really feel sorry for those people that are. I think of how stressful that must be for them. I don't worry because I pray a lot. Maybe you're one of those people and you missed a blessing or two. You're sitting at a beautiful dinner, but you're worrying about something that hadn't happened. Or you're on vacation, but instead of enjoying yourself, you're thinking about everything that could possibly go wrong. Okay, so that brings up a memory from a couple of weeks ago. I went to Cabo a few weeks ago with two of my very best friends. And let me tell you, we were living our best lives. No fear, no worries. Actually, we spent a lot of time walking. I never knew it was so hot there. And I never knew the part that we were in, which was San Jose, was places, restaurants, few and far between. There were a lot of grocery stores, so we did a lot of grocery shopping. But anyway, we were having a great time. Then one day, we decided to go ziplining. There was zero fear in any of us. We climbed up to the zipline area, strapped ourselves onto these harnesses, and got on the cables like three trusting little girls and just zipped away. Not one of us stopped to ask the important questions like, are these cables actually strong enough? Or how old is this equipment? Or maybe even, are these harnesses really going to hold us? And how much pounds is too much pounds? Not one of us said any of that out loud. And honestly, I never even thought about it. I just trusted the equipment and I took off. Well, then it happened. Right in the middle of one of the zips, I stopped. I mean stopped, dead, in the air, in the middle. I'm pretty sure I was about 100 yards above the bottom of that canyon. Now I was scared. Heck yeah, I was scared. But here's the interesting thing. I immediately knew I had a choice. I could let fear completely take over, or I could have faith that I was going to get through this. So I started praying. I really felt close to my mama at that time because I remember saying, Jesus, Jesus, Jesus a lot. But I kept praying because I knew if I stopped praying and started thinking too much about my current situation, fear was going to have a field day. And let me tell you, my brain did not need any help coming up with scenarios for my current situation. But I kept praying and I stayed calm. I prayed, Lord, keep me calm. Help me. I trust you. Jesus, Jesus, Jesus. And eventually a very kind man crawled out to me and rescued me. He pulled me across to the other side and onto the platform, and I was safe. Finally, back on solid ground. And let me tell you, that platform had never looked so beautiful in my entire life. But afterward, I thought about something. How interesting that I had absolutely no fear when I first got on that zip line. I trusted the equipment. I trusted the harness. I trusted the people who were operating it. But when I stopped in midair and suddenly couldn't see how I was going to get myself to the other side, fear showed up fast. Sound familiar? Yep, because that's what grief can do. We can be moving along just fine, trusting God, enjoying life, and then suddenly something happens that brings us to a complete stop. And now we're hanging in midair thinking, Lord, what in the world am I supposed to do now? That's when faith becomes so important. I couldn't see how I was getting to the other side of that canyon, but I didn't have to know. I just had to keep praying, keep trusting, and keep believing that somehow, some way, I was going to get there. And I did, and sometimes that's what faith looks like. You don't know how you're going to get to the other side. You just know God is there with you while you're hanging in the middle. Here's a scenario for you to think about. So you're experiencing something good, but fear whispers to you, don't get too comfortable. That's when I want you to stop and say, nope, not today. Today I choose faith. Not because you know nothing bad will ever happen again, because we don't know that. I don't know that. We can't control that. But we can decide who gets to lead us today, fear or faith. Let me tell you, having faith does not mean you never have fear again. If you're afraid, that's okay. That doesn't mean you're failing. Faith isn't the absence of fear. Faith is deciding that fear doesn't get the final word. You can be scared and still move forward. You can be nervous and still say yes. You can cry and still take that next step. You can miss your person and still build a beautiful life. And you can have questions and still have faith. That's real faith. So what does this look like practically? I want to give you 3 questions to ask yourself this week. Question 1, what is fear keeping me from doing? And be honest. Is there something you've been avoiding? Maybe you've been wanting to travel. What about dating or making new friends? Have you thought about starting a new business? Maybe you even need to go back to church or join a group. Maybe even take a class of something that you've always wanted to do or to learn. I give you these examples because I've been there and done that. Take my word for it. It's not so bad going to a restaurant by yourself. Just say yes. Put it on the paper, name it, be honest. Question number 2, what would faith do next? Not what would fear do, what would faith do? Maybe faith would make that phone call or join that group, or if you're a people pleaser, finally say no, make room for yourself, and faith would rest. Okay? Question 3, what is one tiny step I can take this week? So don't make it enormous. You know how I am about saying baby steps. Just make it a small step for this week. We're not trying to climb Mount Everest. One step, one phone call, one invitation, one walk, and even one prayer. That's how a frozen life begins to thaw out. So your grief relief challenge for this week is I want you to write 2 words on a piece of paper, fear and faith. Under fear, write down the thing that has been holding you back. And under faith, write down what trusting God might look like in that situation. Then write this sentence. Fear freezes life, faith thaws it out. And in every morning this week, ask, who am I allowing to lead me today? Fear or faith? Then pray, Lord, help me remain true to faith today. That's it. One day at a time, one step at a time, one prayer at a time. If you remember nothing else from today's episode, remember this. Fear freezes life. It is faith that thaws it out, releases it, and sets it free. You don't have to know everything that's coming, and you don't have to know how your story ends. You don't have to understand everything God is doing. You simply have to remain true to faith, keep the faith, be faithful. Remember, faith is being sure of what we hope for and certain of what we do not see. And when fear gets loud, it will sometimes remember where your refuge is. He will cover you with his feathers, and under his wings you will find refuge. His faithfulness will be your shield. Y'all, your grief may have changed your life, but it does not have to freeze the rest of your life. There is still life ahead, and there is still purpose, and there is still joy ahead, and there's still things you haven't experienced, and there's still prayers God hasn't answered. There are more chapters that you haven't read. God is still writing your story. So don't let fear convince you that the story ended on the worst day of your life. It did not. God is still writing. Don't forget. And maybe today, your next chapter begins with one simple decision. I will choose faith, even if I'm scared, even if I cry, and even if I don't understand. I will choose faith because I know who holds me. I know who walks beside me. I know who holds tomorrow. So thank you for spending this time with me today on Grief Relief for Christian Women. I hope this topic touched your heart, and maybe you know someone that's in this same fearful mode of their life right now, that this may help them, so share it. And remember, you don't have to walk through grief alone. I'm always here cheering you on. And until next time, keep taking that next faithful step. Bye. Thanks for hanging out with me today. I hope something in this episode gave you a little peace, a little hope, or maybe even a smile. If it did, would you do me a quick favor? Head over to Apple Podcasts and leave a review. It could help more widows find the courage to take their next step. Until next time, remember, you're not alone and joy is still possible.